often do you think back to when you were young? Are your memories good ones? Was it happy and empowering time for you? I hope so. In future, when the current generation of young boys and girls look back on their teenage years, will they also have happy memories? To be honest, I don't really think so. I read newspapers, I listen to the radio, watch television, get a lot of news online. I suspect we all do. I also work with young people a lot, and it strikes me that there is something strange going on. If you're reading a story about a teenager, there is a pretty good chance it's talking about crime or drugs or political apathy, something like that. In fact, did you know that for young males, the best chance for getting positive coverage in the news is if they die? Then they become role models, best students, beloved sons. My problem with this is that it's far from my own experience, and I'm sure yours too. If you are blessed to have an opportunity to work with or for our youth. But this is not just a problem of the media. Culturally, many societies don't deal well with the time that remarks the transition of a person from childhood to adulthood. Oftentimes, our societies, regardless of the level of their development, consistently consider young people to be less important than adults. Young people are often not taken seriously. They are not regularly included in the decision-making process for areas that directly impact their lives or the broader lives of the communities. Such treatment of youth is called adultism. Adults' behaviors and attitudes based on the belief that adults are better than young people and thus are entitled to act on their behalf without agreement. It makes youth feel worthless and powerless, and it diminishes their ability to function well for their own well-being as well as for the well-being of others. Vulnerable boys and girls are further marginalized from the public realm by rising poverty and inequality, increased isolation, and decreasing support from their communities, schools, and their families. And that limits opportunities and power to influence the world around them. But if you're still wondering why this is a big problem requiring our attention and unification of our forces or efforts to address it, this is what I'm going to tell you. Lack of active engagement in the decision-making processes often reflected in youth's poor performance at schools, practicing unhealthy behavior like drinking or smoking, or even willingness to leave their countries and search for development opportunities outside. I visited lots of communities, and I used to hear from youth how they feel excluded and marginalized. It was common for them to say that the exclusion made them feel they need to leave the country, as they did not have a sense of belonging within their communities. It was their attempt to escape from disempowering present, often to an unknown future. Governments around the world are growing increasingly concerned about the instability that might come from disillusioned and disenfranchised youth, particularly young men. Societies where young boys and girls cannot find their place and purpose become very fragile and malfunctioning. Youth as a primary force driving positive change no longer believe that they can make a difference. Well, I'm not trying to say that poor youth representation leads directly to the instability, but a correlation can be seen between the fragility of societies and the maltreatment of youth. A lot of languages have a saying that goes something like, boys and girls should be seen and not heard, or boys and girls should know their place. Well, I don't really have a problem with the second statement. young people should know their place, and it should be right at the heart of their societies. The EU underlines low level of participation and representation of young people in the democratic process as one of the key contemporary challenges. Full youth participation in democratic and developmental processes and youth playing an active role in peace building and civil society is one of the primary objectives of the USAID. So, what does World Vision have to offer? We believe that for a society to be successful and developing, it should have young people who are active and empowered citizens of their communities. In country after country, we are working with youth who are busy making their communities better places, busy transforming adult-youth relationships into trustworthy and reliable partnerships. One of World Vision's models for this to happen is called Why Empower? It is evidence-based, and today I will outline for you how it is empowering youth to have confidence to be the future citizens that we all need them to be. In April 2012, 7 World Vision national offices, Albania, Armenia, Bosnia-Herzegovina, Georgia, Lebanon, Pakistan, and Romania, started a regional program funded by the Australian government. Its aim was to try for improvements in child protection through youth empowerment. The program also wanted to encourage a core group of young activists to get more involved in identifying and advocating of their own well-being and that of their peers. This became the Why Empower model for youth empowerment through youth activism. But let's ask a question. There are so many adolescent and youth development tools and approaches and programs. So why should any of you be willing to apply the Why Empower model? What makes it so unique or different from many other tools also contributing to the transformation of youth? Here is my answer to you. Why Empower is a practice that not only builds the capacity of local youth for civic activism, more importantly, it contributes to the creation and strengthening of the adult-youth partnership. This proves the way towards the empowerment in a unique way that can be statistically shown to be particularly effective. Overall, the proposed model includes 3 key interconnected components: activism, adultism, and empowerment that build on one another. The theory of action that stands behind the model indicates that increased youth activism reduces the sense of adultism, which in turn increases a sense of empowerment among young boys and girls. The Why Empower model first begins with youth activism, which consists of following stages. First, we start by building youth competencies in areas like leadership, communication, advocacy, and knowledge about child and youth rights. Second, the trained youth continue by developing their own initiatives, trying to address their community needs and needs of their peers. Thirdly, at the same time, young boys and girls try to speak on behalf of a wider group of adults and youth at different meetings, being it a ministry or a local government representation. For example, in Pakistan, the cultural context is one that limits girls' and women's participation, and often the community-based child protection meetings that youth were involved in had to separate meetings for boys and girls. But in the urban areas of the project, the meetings were conducted with joint participation. Girls were included. It had such an impact that a Pakistani girl attended an international forum for the project in Dubai, a very uncommon practice. When the girl returned to school, the principal asked her to share her experience with her peers, which also raised awareness about the child protection issues. When asked to comment about her experience through the Why Empower model, she said, "As females, we stepped out first from our homes. After becoming part of the youth group, now we know the importance and move out for working. Our voice is heard. Romanian youth conducted a child protection campaign, including a social media campaign challenging people to buy purses they created. It quickly raised $415 for this vulnerable community in less than 3 weeks. Youth in Armenia had a healthy lifestyle campaign. Lebanese youth even wrote to Queen Rania in Jordan, and they received a letter back giving them her support and highlighting the importance of their engagement in public life. During the project, more than 3,300 children and youth were engaged in different youth initiatives, reaching almost 35,000 community members in partnership with 84 formal and non-formal partners. The second component of the model focuses on the issue of adultism. Under the Y Empower model, changes in the sense of adultism among young boys and girls is an interim consequence of youth activism. In other words, after the rounds of youth activism initiatives, adults start acknowledging and appreciating youth efforts. Despite the initial skepticism, adults start seeing the positive results of youth work. Gradually, they become more open to partner with young boys and girls and become more willing to engage them in the decision-making process. A sense of empowerment is the final end result. It brings a new stage in the lives of young boys and girls. When youth feel and see that their voices are heard and their actions make a difference in people's lives, adults believe in them more and they are empowered to further pursue this transformation for the well-being of children, their fellow youth, and communities. Their empowerment led to some youth even having opportunities to raise their voices at various international fora. Youth, through this initiative, spoke to World Vision leadership at our Triennial Council to influence our own leadership and decisions. They also spoke at EU fora. Erisinia, a 17-year-old girl from Albania, spoke at the EU General Assembly. Once a timid teen, she became a spokesperson for her community and for youth. When discussing the experience, she said, "We do have many problems in Albania, but we should not surrender. We are free and we can organize beautiful things. I know Albania has lots of problems, but nothing can improve by just waiting. I will do my portion." These are great stories, but you might also wonder how I know what I claim that I know. How we can say this with the confidence? World Vision conducted a quasi-experimental study of the Y Empower model. It demonstrated that youth engaged in the model were far more active in all 3 areas of activism, which are capacity building, youth initiatives, and peer representation, than youth not exposed to the model, but living in the same communities. And the results were statistically significant. In other words, it is not a random chance. We know academically that these 3 variables are related and do lead to youth sense of empowerment. Furthermore, around 90% of the Y Empower youth believe that they have skills and competencies to advocate for community changes. Over 80% of them reported the transformation of adults' perception of youth, emphasizing the increase of appreciation of youth ideas and youth opinions. 94% of young boys and girls taking part said they would continue their civic activism even after the finish of the program. For example, 30 youth in Romania started a youth network, which within a year grew to 150 youth and 14 adults, and continued to increase. In 2 countries, the core youth groups actively participating in the Y Empower model created their own NGOs to continue their contribution to the community transformation for the well-being of their peers and other community members. I'm sure we all agree that youth are the future of any society. Investment in youth is an investment in the future of a state. Application of the Y-Empower model at a wider scale will contribute to the transformation of more youth into positive change agents, as well as more adults into trustworthy and reliable partners of empowered boys and girls. Do we want youngsters with a strong sense of hope for future? Do we want boys and girls taking steps for their society's development? Do we want the decision-making process being enriched by youth engagement? Do we want adults and youth working together on positive change-making? If your answer is yes, then the Y-Empower model is a proven way forward. Well, if any of you would like to know more about Y-Empower or any other evidence for change work that World Vision is doing, then there is a website, www.evidenceforchange.org. Thank you.